Elvis Presley wore jumpsuits. Everyone knows that. They were bright. They were tight. They were covered in rhinestones and studs. They defined his look in the 1970s. But that's where the simple facts end. The story behind these outfits is full of holes. It's a mix of myth, conflicting memories, and secrets that went to the grave. We think we know the jumpsuits, but we don't. How much did the most famous one really weigh? Was it a symbol of freedom or a creative prison? Did the man who designed them get the credit he deserved? These clothes were more than just costumes. They were part of Elvis, and like Elvis, they are surrounded by questions that may never get a real answer. Number 15. What happened to the very first one? The story of the jumpsuits doesn't start with a giant eagle or a sparkling peacock. It starts with something much simpler. It was 1969. Elvis was about to return to live performing. He hadn't been on a stage in front of a real audience in almost a decade. The 68 comeback special had proven he still had it. But that was for television. Las Vegas was different. The International Hotel was a massive stage. He needed a new look. The black leather from the 68 special was too hot. It was iconic, but it wasn't practical for a full show under stage lights. So he turned to a Hollywood costume designer named Bill Ballou. Ballou had worked on the 68 special. Elvis trusted him. The idea was to create something that allowed for movement. Elvis was still doing karate kicks and lunges on stage. He needed fabric that would stretch. He also needed a look that was unique. He couldn't just wear a suit like Frank Sinatra. He was Elvis Presley. The first outfits Ballou created weren't really jumpsuits. They were two-piece outfits, a top and matching pants. They were made from a wool gabardine blend. Simple, clean, usually in black or white. The most famous of these early looks is the white herringbone suit. He wore it on his opening night at the International Hotel on July 31st, 1969. It had a high collar, which would become a staple. It had a simple macrame belt tied at the side. It was a huge departure from the leather. It was modern. It was the start of the 70s, Elvis. You know, these two-piece outfits were the blueprint. Soon, Ballou would connect the top and bottom, creating the first true one-piece jumpsuit. But what happened to that original white herringbone outfit? The one that started it all. The one he wore on that legendary comeback night, you would think it would be a centerpiece at Graceland. A holy grail for collectors, but its location is a complete mystery. Graceland has an incredible collection of jumpsuits. They have the American Eagle from the Aloha concert. They have the Peacock. They have dozens of others on display, but the first one is not there. It's not in any known private collection either. It just vanished. Some people think it was simply worn out. In those early Vegas shows, Elvis was a machine. He performed 2 shows a night for a month straight. The outfits took a beating. They were soaked in sweat, stretched, and sometimes torn during his energetic performances. Maybe the first suit was just used up and thrown away. It's hard to imagine today, but in 1969, nobody was thinking about preserving these things for a museum 50 years later. They were work clothes. Another theory is that Elvis gave it away. He was famous for his generosity. He gave away cars, jewelry, and cash to friends and even strangers. It's possible he gave the suit to a friend or a member of the Memphis Mafia. If that's the case, it could be sitting in an attic somewhere. The owner might not even realize what they have. Or maybe they do and they're keeping it private. The records from that time are not perfect. Bill Ballou and his partner Jean Doucette at IC Costume Co. were making outfits at a furious pace. They didn't keep detailed logs of every single item's fate. Their job was to get the next suit ready for the next show. What happened to the old one wasn't their primary concern. Butch Polston, who wrote the book Elvis and the Jumpsuit, has spent years trying to track down these costumes. He has documented hundreds of them, but the first one remains elusive. Its disappearance is strange because of its historical importance. This wasn't just another suit. This was the suit that launched the most famous chapter of his career. It was the uniform for his second coming. So where did it go? Was it discarded as just another old costume? Is it hidden in a private collection waiting to be revealed? Could it have been stolen at some point and sold on a black market for rock and roll memorabilia? The trail has gone completely cold. For the suit that started a cultural phenomenon, its final resting place is one of the biggest and most frustrating blanks in the entire Elvis story. What we still don't know, did anyone in Elvis's inner circle ever admit to seeing the suit after the 1969 Vegas run? Are there any shipping records or receipts from IC Costume Co. that might give a clue about repairs or its eventual fate? If it was thrown away, who would have made that call? And why would they discard something so significant even at the time? Could it be that the suit we think of as the first was actually one of several identical suits, and the others were simply worn into oblivion? Number 14, why the sudden shift from leather to jumpsuits? The 68 Comeback Special is a landmark television event. It rebooted Elvis's career. It took him from making bad movies to being the king of rock and roll again. And the image from that show is seared into our minds Elvis in head-to-toe black leather. He looked dangerous, he looked lean, he looked like a rock star. The outfit, designed by Bill Ballou, was a perfect symbol for his raw, stripped-down performance. So why, just a year later, did he ditch it completely? The official reason is practical. The leather was incredibly hot. During the taping of the 68 special, the heat under the studio lights was so intense that Elvis was literally pouring sweat. His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, reportedly had the studio's air conditioning turned off to make sure the audience didn't get cold, which made it even worse for Elvis. He was performing with the energy of a man half his age. The leather didn't breathe. It was restrictive. According to stories from the production, he was suffering from dehydration. It looked great, but it was a nightmare to wear. When he signed the deal to perform at the International Hotel in Las Vegas in 1969, he knew he couldn't wear leather every night. He was scheduled for dozens of shows. He needed something that allowed him to move freely and stay relatively cool. This is the simple, logical explanation for the switch. Bill Ballou was tasked with creating this new stage wear, which led to the first two-piece outfits and then the one-piece jumpsuits. But was it really just about the heat? The shift was so dramatic. He went from the ultimate symbol of rebellious rock and roll to something that looked more like a superhero or a Vegas showman. The jumpsuits, especially the early ones, were a complete aesthetic break from his past. The black leather connected back to his 50s rebel image. The jumpsuits were something entirely new. They had no precedent in rock music. Some believe the change was driven by Colonel Tom Parker. The Colonel wanted to position Elvis as a family-friendly, mainstream entertainer. And Las Vegas was about spectacle. It was about glitz and glamour. Black leather screamed rock and roll club. A white, gem-studded jumpsuit screamed Las Vegas headliner. The Colonel was a master of marketing. He knew that to conquer Vegas, Elvis needed a Vegas look. The jumpsuit was that look. It was theatrical, it made him larger than life, a figure who could command a massive showroom stage. There's also Elvis's own psychology to consider. He was reinventing himself. The 68 special was about reclaiming his past. The Vegas shows were about defining his future. He didn't want to be a nostalgic, just reliving his 50s glory. He wanted to be a contemporary artist. The jumpsuit was a forward-looking costume. It was space age. It was modern. It was a visual statement that he was not the same kid who sang Hound Dog on the Ed Sullivan Show. And then there's the karate. Elvis was deeply passionate about martial arts. He had been studying it since his time in the army. By the late 60s, it was a central part of his life and his stage act. He wanted to incorporate high kicks and karate chops into his performances. You can't do that in tight leather pants. The gabardine and later the polyester double knit of the jumpsuits were designed specifically for that kind of movement. The flared legs, the stretchy fabric, it was a uniform for a new kind of physical performance. So the shift wasn't just about comfort, it was a calculated business decision, a personal artistic statement, and a practical necessity all rolled into one. The leather was a tribute to his roots, the jumpsuit was an announcement of his new kingdom, but the speed of the transition is still jarring. He established an iconic look and then abandoned it almost overnight. What we still don't know. Did Elvis ever express regret about leaving the leather look behind? Were there any prototype costumes between the leather and the first jumpsuits that were rejected? How much direct input did Colonel Parker have in the design choice beyond just general direction? Was there a single moment or conversation where Elvis definitively said, "I'm done with leather, get me something completely different"? This number 13, was the sun design a nod to his beginning or his end? In late 1974, Elvis debuted one of his most visually stunning and symbolic jumpsuits. It's known as the Mexican sundial, or simply the sundial suit. It was a complex and beautiful design. An intricate golden sunburst pattern, meticulously embroidered and studded with jewels, dominated the chest and back. The design was created by Jean Doucet, the chief embroiderer for Bill Bellew's company. It was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, but what did it mean? The most obvious interpretation connects back to Elvis's roots. He started his career at Sun Records in Memphis. The record label's logo was a classic sunburst design. Sam Phillips, the founder of Sun, was the man who discovered him. That little studio was where it all began. The sundial jumpsuit could have been a deliberate tribute to his origins, a way of acknowledging the foundation upon which his entire kingdom was built. By 1974, Elvis was deep into a grueling concert schedule. He was often tired and disillusioned. Maybe he was looking back to a simpler, happier time. This theory makes sense. Elvis was often nostalgic. He surrounded himself with people from his past. He loved telling stories about the old days. The Sun Records era was a time of pure, raw creativity. Putting the sun on his chest could have been a source of strength for him, a reminder of the young, hungry kid who changed the world. But there's a darker, more complex interpretation. By 1974, Elvis's life was in turmoil. His divorce from Priscilla was finalized in 1973. His health was deteriorating. He was increasingly reliant on prescription drugs. He was struggling with his weight. His performances were becoming erratic. Some nights he was brilliant, other nights he was a shadow of his former self. In this context, the sun symbol takes on a different meaning. The sun is a powerful symbol of life, energy, and power. But it's also a star that is burning out. The sundial itself is a symbol of the passing of time. It measures the inexorable march towards the end of the day, the end of life. Was Elvis, perhaps subconsciously, grappling with his own mortality? Did he feel his time was running out? Jean Doucet has said that the design was inspired by an Aztec calendar. This adds another layer. The Aztec calendar is a symbol of cycles of creation and destruction. It represents a worldview where time is not linear but circular, where ages end and new ones begin. Elvis was a spiritual seeker. He read countless books on religion, numerology, and mysticism. He was fascinated by symbols and their hidden meanings. It's highly likely that he would have been aware of the deeper symbolism of the Aztec sunstone. He wore the suit for the last time in October 1974. After a show, he came off stage and told his entourage that he hated the suit. He complained that it was too heavy and restrictive. He never wore it again. This is significant. Why would he have such a strong negative reaction to a suit he had worn multiple times? Some speculate that the suit's weight was a physical manifestation of his emotional and health problems. He was getting heavier, and the increasingly elaborate and heavy jumpsuits were becoming harder to perform in. The sundial, with its extensive embroidery, was one of the heaviest. The sundial suit seems to mark a turning point. After he retired it, his weight problems became more pronounced. His performances in 1975 and 1976 were often difficult to watch. The light, energetic performer of the early 70s was disappearing. The sun was setting. So, was the sundial a happy memory of Sun Records, or was it a somber reflection on time, mortality, and the end of an era? The answer probably lies somewhere in the complex and contradictory mind of Elvis himself. He may have intended it as one thing, but it came to represent another. What we still don't know, did Elvis ever explicitly tell anyone that the design was a reference to Sun Records? Did Jean Doucet discuss the Aztec symbolism with Elvis before creating the suit? Why did Elvis have such a visceral, negative reaction to the suit on that final night he wore it? Does the original design sketch for the suit have any notes or annotations that might reveal its intended meaning? Number 12, who owns the most important suits now? When Elvis died on August 16, 1977, he left behind a massive legacy and a mountain of personal belongings. Among the most valuable and iconic of these were his stage costumes. The collection included over 100 jumpsuits, capes, and belts. The question of what would happen to them and who would own them became a complicated issue. Today, the single largest and most important collection of Elvis's jumpsuits is owned by Elvis Presley Enterprises, the corporate entity that runs Graceland and the Elvis Presley estate. When you visit Graceland, you can see many of the most famous suits on display. The American Eagle from the 1973 Aloha from Hawaii concert is there. The Peacock from 1974 is there. The Black Conquistador from 1972 is there. These are the crown jewels. They are meticulously preserved and are considered priceless historical artifacts. Graceland's collection is secure. It was part of Elvis's personal property that passed to his estate, which was eventually inherited by his daughter, Lisa Marie Presley. But not all the suits ended up at Graceland. The story is much messier than that. In the years before and immediately after his death, many of Elvis's belongings walked out the door. Elvis was incredibly generous. He often gave his jumpsuits away to friends, family, and members of his entourage as gifts. If he got tired of a suit, or if it was damaged, he might just hand it to someone. At the time, it was just a used costume. Nobody knew it would one day be worth a fortune. So a number of authentic jumpsuits ended up in private hands this way. Then there's the chaos following his death. His father, Vernon Presley, was in charge of the estate. Vernon was not a sophisticated businessman. He was a grieving father trying to manage a complicated situation. According to several accounts, he sold off some of Elvis's jumpsuits to clear out storage and raise cash. He reportedly sold a large number of them to a single collector for what now seems like a ridiculously low price. This single transaction scattered dozens of original suits into the private market. One of the most famous private collectors is a man named Jimmy Velvet. He was a friend of Elvis's and opened one of the first Elvis Presley museums. He acquired many artifacts, including jumpsuits, directly from the Presley family or from others in Elvis's circle. Over the years, he has sold many of these items at auction. This has created a thriving and sometimes murky market for Elvis's stage wear. Jumpsuits will occasionally appear at major auction houses like Julien's auctions. When they do, they fetch astronomical prices. A genuine performance-worn jumpsuit can sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. The American Eagle cape, which was separated from the jumpsuit, sold for over $100,000. If the full Aloha suit ever went to auction, it would likely command a price in the millions, making it one of the most expensive pieces of clothing in the world. This creates a conflict. Graceland, as the official home of Elvis, wants to be the definitive repository of his history. They have tried to reacquire important suits that are in private hands, but they are competing against wealthy collectors who see these items as trophies. It's a battle between historical preservation and private investment. The result is that the world's most famous costumes are scattered. The primary collection is safe in Memphis, but many others are in private homes, bank vaults, or smaller museums around the world. Every few years, another one surfaces, sparking a bidding war and reminding everyone that the complete history of Elvis's stage wardrobe is not contained within the walls of Graceland. But we still don't know what is the exact number of jumpsuits that Vernon Presley sold after Elvis's death, and who was the original buyer. Are there any major jumpsuits still in the possession of the original friends or family members who received them as gifts from Elvis? Which privately owned jumpsuit is considered the most valuable, and what is its estimated worth? Has Graceland ever made a serious multi-million-dollar offer to a private collector to bring a major suit back into the official collection? Number 11. How much are they really worth? This seems like a simple question. An item is worth what someone is willing to pay for it. But with Elvis's jumpsuits, it's not that easy. There is no clear price guide. The value is a mix of history, rarity, condition, and pure emotion. The market is unpredictable and shrouded in a certain amount of secrecy. At the very top of the pyramid are the Holy Grail suits. These are the ones directly associated with iconic moments. The American Eagle suit from the Aloha from Hawaii global satellite broadcast in 1973 is almost certainly the most valuable. It's the suit he wore when an estimated 1.5 billion people watched him perform. It's so famous, it has its own name. What is it worth? It's almost impossible to say because it's owned by Graceland and will likely never be sold. And experts have speculated it could be worth anywhere from $5 million to $10 million, or even more. It's in the same category as Marilyn Monroe's Happy Birthday, Mr. President dress, or a pair of Dorothy's ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz. It's a cultural treasure. Other top-tier suits would include the Peacock, famous for its beauty, and the fact Elvis considered it a good luck charm, the Sundial for its intricate design and symbolism, and any of the suits worn in the 1970 documentary Elvis, That's the Way It Is. These suits, if they were in good condition and had solid proof of being worn on stage, would easily command prices in the high six figures or low seven figures at auction. The next tier down would be jumpsuits that were worn on stage but aren't tied to a specific famous event. A genuine jumpsuit from a regular 1975 tour stop, for example. These are still incredibly rare and valuable. In 2017, a suit known as the Blue Armadillo sold at auction for over $250,000. Another, the Aqua Blue jumpsuit, fetched $325,000. The price depends heavily on the condition of the suit. Are the rhinestones intact? Is the fabric stained or torn? Then there are the belts and capes. These were often separated from the jumpsuits. A magnificent heavy belt from a famous suit can be worth $50,000 to $100,000 on its own. The capes are also highly sought after. The story of the Aloha cape is a perfect example of the strange market. And Elvis dramatically threw the original cape into the audience at the end of the Aloha concert. A fan caught it. It has been in private hands ever since. Years later, Graceland acquired a replica cape to display with the suit. The original cape has been sold and resold, its value climbing each time. One of the biggest problems in determining value is authenticity. Because the prices are so high, the market is flooded with fakes and replicas. It takes a team of experts to authenticate a suit. They examine the stitching, the materials, the labels from IC Costume Co., and the specific patterns of the studs and embroidery. Jean Doucette, the man who did the embroidery, has often been called upon to verify if a suit is one of his original creations. Provenance is everything. You need an unbroken chain of ownership going back to someone in Elvis's inner circle. A photo of Elvis wearing the exact suit is the ultimate proof. The value is also emotional. For a wealthy fan, owning a piece of clothing that Elvis Presley wore on stage is the ultimate connection to their hero. They aren't just buying fabric and rhinestones, they are buying a piece of history, a piece of the magic. And for that, they are willing to pay almost any price. This emotional factor makes the market volatile and unpredictable. A suit could sell for $200,000 one year, and if two billionaire fans get into a bidding war over it 5 years later, it could sell for 3 times that amount. What we still don't know, what is the highest price ever paid for an Elvis jumpsuit in a private sale, which would not be public knowledge? Are there investment groups or hedge funds that secretly buy and trade these suits as assets like fine art? How many highly convincing fake jumpsuits are currently being passed off as authentic in private collections? If the Aloha from Hawaii jumpsuit were to be stolen from Graceland, what would be its value on the international black market for stolen art and artifacts? Number 10. Did Elvis have a secret code in the suit designs? On the surface, the jumpsuit designs seem to follow a clear evolution. They started simple and white. Then they got more colorful, then they got more elaborate, with animals, geometric patterns, and abstract symbols. Most people see this as a reflection of 1970s fashion and Vegas showmanship. But was there something more going on? Did Elvis embed a secret language into his stage clothes? Elvis was a deeply spiritual person, but his beliefs were a complex mixture of different traditions. He was raised in the Assembly of God Church, a Pentecostal Christian denomination. He always maintained a deep love for gospel music and the Bible, but in the 1960s, he began a private spiritual quest. He was introduced to the world of esoteric and metaphysical literature by his hairdresser, Larry Geller. Elvis devoured books on numerology, theosophy, pyramidology, Eastern religions, and mysticism. He was fascinated by the idea of hidden knowledge and universal truths. He would underline passages and make notes in the margins of his books. He was searching for answers about the meaning of life, death, and God. It's not a stretch to think that he would want to incorporate these ideas into the most visible part of his life, his stage persona. Consider the symbols he chose. The eagle is the most famous. He had several eagle-themed suits, most notably the American eagle for the Aloha concert. The eagle is the national symbol of the United States, so the patriotic interpretation is obvious. But the eagle is also a powerful spiritual symbol in many cultures. In Native American traditions, it represents a connection to the divine. In ancient mysticism, it symbolizes ascension, power, and illumination. For a man who felt he had a spiritual mission, wearing an eagle could have been a way of channeling that power. Then there's the peacock suit. A peacock is a symbol of beauty and pride, but in many spiritual traditions, it represents immortality, resurrection, and all-seeing knowledge because of the eyes on its feathers. And Elvis wore this suit during a period when he was feeling particularly good about his life and career. He reportedly considered it a lucky charm. He also wore suits with tiger and dragon designs. The tiger is a symbol of power, ferocity, and passion. The dragon, especially in Eastern cultures, represents wisdom, good fortune, and cosmic power. These weren't just random cool animals, they were potent symbols that aligned with the kind of larger-than-life, almost mythical persona he was projecting on stage. There are also more subtle clues. He was interested in numerology, the number of studs on a belt, the number of points on a star, the repetition of certain patterns. Could these have had a numerical significance known only to him? His famous ETCB logo, taking care of business with the lightning bolt, is a perfect example of his love for personal symbols. He and his entourage wore TCB pendants. He put it on his private jet. It was his personal crest. The jumpsuits were an extension of this. Jean Doucette, the man who designed the embroidery, has said that Elvis would sometimes give him very specific instructions. He might give him a piece of jewelry or a drawing from a book as inspiration. This suggests that Elvis was not just a passive recipient of the designs, he was an active participant. He was embedding his personal philosophy into his wardrobe. Of course, it's possible to read too much into this. Maybe he just thought an eagle looked patriotic and a peacock looked beautiful. But given his documented obsession with spiritualism and symbolism, it seems unlikely that the designs were chosen at random. The jumpsuits may have been his own unique form of spiritual armor, a way of wearing his beliefs without having to say a word. What we still don't know, are there any surviving sketches or notes from Elvis himself that explicitly detail a symbolic meaning for a particular suit design? Did Larry Geller, his spiritual mentor, ever discuss the jumpsuit symbols and whether they were connected to their readings? Did Jean Doucette ever create a design based on a specific mystical symbol that Elvis requested, only to have it rejected by Bill Ballou or Colonel Parker for being too obscure? Could a detailed analysis of all the suits reveal a recurring pattern or symbol that has so far gone unnoticed? Number 9. What's the story behind the missing TLC jumpsuit? Everyone knows about Elvis's TCB, taking care of business mantra. He had gold necklaces made with the logo for himself and the men in his inner circle. It was his personal brand, but there was also a female equivalent, TLC, for tender loving care. He gave TLC necklaces to the important women in his life, including his wife Priscilla and his girlfriend Linda Thompson. It was the other half of his personal philosophy. Sometime in the early 1970s, the idea came up to create a jumpsuit based on the TLC logo. This makes perfect sense. He had the TCB logo on his plane, the Lisa Marie. He lived by that code. It stands to reason that he would want to represent the ETLC side as well. The story of what happened to this suit, or if it was even made, is one of the most specific and intriguing jumpsuit mysteries. The main source for the story of the TLC suit comes from the designers themselves, Bill Ballou and Jean Doucette. They have mentioned in interviews that they designed and possibly even manufactured a jumpsuit with a TLC theme. The design supposedly featured the letters TLC prominently, likely on the chest or back, perhaps with the signature lightning bolt. The color and other details are not widely known, but here's the mystery. No photograph of Elvis wearing a TLC jumpsuit has ever surfaced. Not a single one. Not from a professional photographer, not from a fan in the audience. There's no concert record, no set list, no fan account that mentions him ever appearing on stage in such a suit. It's a ghost. So what happened? There are several possibilities. The first is that the suit was designed but never actually made. It could have been just a sketch, an idea that was discussed and then scrapped for some reason. Perhaps Elvis or Colonel Parker decided it was too personal or that the design just didn't work as a stage costume. In the fast-paced world of creating Elvis's wardrobe, many ideas were likely considered and rejected. The TLC suit could simply be one of them. The second possibility is that the suit was made, but Elvis never wore it. He had dozens of jumpsuits in his wardrobe. He might have tried it on, decided he didn't like the fit or the look, and just hung it back in the closet. He was the star. If he didn't want to wear something, nobody could make him. If this is the case, the unworn suit could have been among the many items in his closets at Graceland when he died. It might have been sold off by his father Vernon after his death and could now be sitting in a private collection, its significance unknown. A third, more dramatic theory is that the suit was made, worn in a private setting like a rehearsal, and then was either lost, stolen, or given away without ever being photographed. This is less likely, as Elvis was one of the most photographed people on the planet. It's hard to believe he could wear a new jumpsuit, even in private, without someone snapping a picture. The existence of the TLC suit is tantalizing because it represents a side of Elvis that was often hidden from the public. The jumpsuits were symbols of his power, his masculinity, his TCB attitude. A TLC suit would have been a public acknowledgement of his softer, more vulnerable side. It would have been a tribute to the women in his life. Its absence from the visual record is a missing piece of the puzzle. Butch Polston, a leading expert on the jumpsuits, has researched this mystery extensively. In his book, he notes the accounts from the designers but confirms the complete lack of any photographic evidence. The trail goes cold. It exists only in the memories of a few people. Without a photo or the suit itself, the TLC jumpsuit remains a legend. What we still don't know, do the original design sketches for the TLC jumpsuit still exist in the archives of Bill Ballou or Jean Doucette? If the suit was manufactured, is there an IC Costume Co. receipt or work order for it? Did Linda Thompson or any other recipient of the TLC necklace ever see the suit or hear Elvis talk about it? Could the suit have been made in a color or style so similar to another suit that it has been misidentified in photos all these years? Number 8, are there secret, undiscovered jumpsuits? The known number of Elvis's jumpsuits is somewhere around 120. Experts like Butch Polston have painstakingly cataloged them, giving them names based on their color or design, like the blue swirl or the white pinwheel. This catalog is based on photos, concert footage, and the surviving suits themselves. But is it complete? Is it possible that there are still jumpsuits out there that the world has never seen? The answer is almost certainly yes. The production process for these suits was an ongoing creative whirlwind. The team at IC Costume Co. in Hollywood was constantly working on new designs. Not every idea that went into production would have been a home run. It's very likely that they created prototype suits that were never approved for stage use. Imagine this scenario: Jean Doucette sketches a new elaborate design. Bill Ballou approves it. The team spends weeks cutting, sewing, and studying the suit. They ship it to Elvis. He tries it on, and for whatever reason, he just doesn't like it. Maybe the color doesn't look right under the lights. Maybe it's too heavy. Maybe he's just not in the mood for a suit covered in, say, astrological signs. That suit wouldn't just be thrown away, it would be put aside. What happened to these rejected prototypes? Some of them might have been repurposed. The expensive studs and jewels could have been removed and used on another suit. The fabric could have been altered, but some might have just been stored away at the costume company's workshop. When the company eventually closed, what happened to their archives? It's possible that a one-of-a-kind, never-worn Elvis jumpsuit was sold as old inventory or simply packed away in a box that now sits in a dusty storage unit. There's also the matter of suits that were worn, but never properly photographed. In the mid-70s, Elvis was touring relentlessly, playing in smaller cities and towns. Not every show was attended by professional photographers. Fan photography was not as widespread or high quality as it is today. Elvis might have decided to try out a new suit for a single show in Asheville, North Carolina, or Lincoln, Nebraska. If he didn't like how it felt, he might never wear it again. A grainy fan photo might exist somewhere, but it may be so blurry that the suit is unrecognizable. We know that variations of suits existed. For example, there are multiple versions of the simple white or blue two-piece suits from the early 1970s. They look similar at a distance, but the details are different. Could there be a completely unique design that was only worn once or twice and has been mistaken for a more common suit in the few photos that exist of it? Then there's the period right at the end of his life in 1977. His weight was fluctuating wildly. This created a huge problem for his costumers. They had to have suits ready for him in different sizes. According to some reports, they were working on new, more forgiving designs that would be more comfortable for him. Were any of these new designs completed before he died? If so, these last jumpsuits would have been delivered to Graceland and packed away. They represent the final unrealized evolution of his stage wear. The search for these undiscovered suits is one of the ultimate treasure hunts for Elvis fans and collectors. Finding one would be like discovering a lost Beatles song. It would add a new chapter to the story. And given the chaotic nature of his life and career, it's almost certain that some of these treasures are still out there, waiting to be found. What we still don't know, how many prototype or rejected jumpsuits were left at the IC Costume Co. workshops when they ceased operations. Are there professional photographers who have undeveloped or unscanned negatives from concerts that might show a previously unknown suit? Did Elvis's father, Vernon, sell any unworn or prototype suits along with the stage-worn ones after his death? Could a completely unknown jumpsuit be hanging in the closet of a former IC Costume employee who took it home as a souvenir? Number 7, how many jumpsuits were actually made? This question sounds simple, but the answer is surprisingly elusive. There is no single official master list of every jumpsuit, cape, and belt ever created for Elvis Presley. The people who know for sure Elvis, Bill Ballou, and Colonel Tom Parker are all gone. What we're left with are estimates, and those estimates vary wildly. If you count every single stage outfit from the 1969 return to the final concert in 1977, the number is well over 100. Most dedicated researchers like Butch Polston put the number of distinct jumpsuit designs at around 120 to 130. This list includes the early two-piece suits, the one-piece jumpsuits, and the various color and design variations. But this number only accounts for the suits we know about. It's based on the ones we can see in pictures and footage, and the ones that exist in Graceland or private collections. As we've discussed, there were almost certainly prototypes and suits that were rejected or worn only once. If you include those, the number could be significantly higher. Another complication is the existence of duplicates. For very important shows or long tours, the costume company would often make more than one version of a particular jumpsuit. This was a practical measure. If a suit was torn or badly stained during a performance, there needed to be a backup ready for the next show. This was especially true for the simple white or blue suits that he wore frequently in the early 70s. So, when we talk about the white bicentennial suit, are we talking about a single garment, or were there 2 or 3 identical suits made? For the Aloha from Hawaii concert, it's widely believed that at least 2 American Eagle suits were created, just in case something happened to the primary one before the broadcast. This means that for many designs, there isn't just the suit, but several of them. This makes a precise count very difficult. Do you count designs, or do you count individual garments? The records from IC Costume Co. are not complete. Bill Ballou and Jean Doucet were running a business, not a museum. They were focused on deadlines and delivery, not on creating a perfect archive for future historians. Invoices might just say one white suit without detailing the specific design. Over the 8 years they worked with Elvis, hundreds of pieces of clothing were created. It's unrealistic to think a perfect record of every single one exists. Then there is the issue of definition. What counts as a jumpsuit? Do the two-piece outfits from 1969 and 1970 count? Most experts say yes, as they were the direct precursors and part of the same aesthetic. What about the casual stage wear he sometimes wore, like the famous puffy suits or the two-piece bicentennial outfit? Some catalogs include them, others don't. The number also depends on who you ask. Graceland has its own inventory, but it's not complete. Private collectors claim to own dozens of suits not in the Graceland collection. Add it all up, and you get a fuzzy picture. The number is likely somewhere between 150 and 200 individual garments, representing about 120 distinct designs. But no one can say for sure. The lack of a definitive jumpsuit census means we can never be certain that the collection is complete. It's a frustratingly simple question with no simple answer. What we still don't know: what is the highest number of duplicates ever made for a single jumpsuit design? Did IC Costume Co. keep any kind of internal master list of all the Elvis projects they worked on, and if so, where is it now? How many jumpsuits were in Elvis's closets at Graceland at the time of his death, including duplicates and unworn suits? If you count every single belt and cape as a separate item, what is the total number of costume pieces created for him in the 1970s? Number 6. Why did he stop wearing them? The last time Elvis Presley wore one of his famous jumpsuits on stage was at his final concert in Indianapolis on June 26, 1977. The suit was the Mexican sundial. Wait, that's not right. He had retired that 1 year earlier. And the suit he wore at his last show was the Aztec or Mexican calendar suit, a different design but often confused with the sundial because of the similar theme. The key question is not about that specific night, but about the period leading up to it. In his last year, Elvis seemed to be moving away from the jumpsuits. Why? The most obvious and painful answer is his weight. The jumpsuits of the early 1970s were designed for a lean, athletic man. They were meant to be worn tight to accentuate his physique and allow for his karate moves. As Elvis gained a significant amount of weight in the mid to late 70s, the jumpsuits became a problem. They were unforgiving. A tight, one-piece garment highlights every pound. This created a massive challenge for his designers. Bill Ballou and Jean Doucette had to constantly adjust their patterns. They used different cuts and fabrics to try and create a more flattering silhouette. But there was only so much they could do. Photos and footage from 1976 and 1977 show Elvis looking visibly uncomfortable in his stage clothes. The suits looked strained, he couldn't move the way he used to. The physical freedom the jumpsuit once provided was gone. It had become a constricting uniform. In 1975 and 1976, he began to experiment with different stage outfits. He started wearing two-piece outfits again. These were often called puffy suits or vest-over-shirt combos. They consisted of a loose-fitting poet-style shirt and matching pants. These outfits were much more forgiving of his fluctuating weight. They were more comfortable and allowed for better movement. He looked more relaxed in them. This wasn't a complete abandonment of the jumpsuit. He would still wear them for many shows. But the introduction of these alternative costumes showed that he or his team was aware of the problem. They were looking for a solution. The jumpsuit, the symbol of his 70s superstardom, was no longer working for him. There may have been an emotional reason as well. The jumpsuit was the uniform of his Las Vegas residency and his grueling tour schedule. By 1977, he was deeply burned out. He was tired of the road. He was tired of the routine. He would often complain backstage about having to go on. It's possible that the jumpsuit became a symbol of this trap. Putting it on meant it was time to go to work, to become the larger-than-life Elvis that the audience demanded. Perhaps he was starting to resent it. The aesthetic was also becoming dated. By the late 70s, the era of glam rock was fading. Music was moving towards punk and disco. A man in his early 40s, wearing a rhinestone-covered jumpsuit, was starting to look like a relic of a bygone era. Elvis was always sensitive about his image. He may have felt that it was time for a new look, something more contemporary. If he had lived, it's almost certain that his stage wardrobe would have evolved. He might have abandoned the jumpsuits altogether in favor of the more comfortable two-piece suits, or perhaps a completely new style. The 1977 tour was a transition period. He was trying to figure out what came next, both musically and stylistically. His final concert in the Aztec suit wasn't a planned farewell to the jumpsuit era. It just happened to be the last time he wore one. The decision to stop wasn't a single event, but a slow, sad process driven by health, comfort, and a changing world. What we still don't know were their specific conversations between Elvis and Bill Ballou about designing a permanent replacement for the jumpsuit. Did Colonel Parker pressure him to keep wearing the jumpsuits because they were a marketable part of his image? How many of the two-piece puffy suits were made? And were they intended to eventually replace the jumpsuits entirely? Did Elvis ever explicitly say to a member of his entourage, "I'm sick of wearing these things"? Number 5 was the Aloha from Hawaii jumpsuit cursed. The American Eagle jumpsuit from the 1973 Aloha from Hawaii via satellite concert is the most famous costume Elvis ever wore. It's his defining image. The concert was a massive triumph. It was broadcast to over 40 countries with a viewing audience estimated at over 1.5 billion people. It was the peak of his global fame. Elvis was in incredible shape. He gave a commanding, powerful performance. The suit, with its patriotic eagle and stunning cape, was the perfect uniform for the king of the world. But what happened after that night? From that peak, a slow and steady decline began. This has led some fans and observers to develop a dark superstition that the Aloha suit was somehow cursed. Not in a supernatural sense, but in a symbolic one. It represented a summit so high that the only way to go was down. Consider the timeline. The Aloha concert was in January 1973. Later that year, in October, his divorce from Priscilla was finalized. This was a huge emotional blow. His health problems, which had been manageable, started to worsen. His dependency on prescription drugs increased dramatically. His weight began to fluctuate, marking the beginning of the heavy period that would define his later years. Musically, the Aloha concert was also a creative peak that he would never quite reach again. It was his last truly global, culture-defining moment. After 1973, he recorded less and less new material. His albums were often filled with live recordings or leftover studio tracks. The fire and ambition that drove him to stage the Aloha broadcast seemed to fade. He settled into the comfortable but grueling routine of touring. The suit itself became an impossible act to follow. It was so iconic, so over the top, that any subsequent jumpsuit seemed like a lesser version. It was the ultimate statement. How do you top a global satellite broadcast in a suit that embodies American power and showbiz excess? You can't. The suit and the event became a gilded cage. He had reached the pinnacle, and now he was expected to stay there, night after night. The weight of the suit is also a factor, both literally and metaphorically. The cape alone weighed over 12 pounds. The entire ensemble was heavy, hot, and cumbersome. Performing in it required immense stamina. This physical burden mirrored the metaphorical burden of his fame. The weight of being Elvis Presley was becoming too much to bear. Of course, this is all symbolic interpretation. The real reasons for Elvis's decline are well-documented: drug abuse, poor diet, the stress of his career, and emotional turmoil. But symbols are powerful. For Elvis, a man who believed in signs and omens, the Aloha concert might have felt like a final grand statement. After you've sung to the entire world, what's left to prove? The curse of the Aloha suit is the curse of peaking too early. It was the climax of his comeback, but the show had to go on. He spent the next 4.5 years trying to live up to the image he created on that one night in Honolulu. The American Eagle was a symbol of his majestic flight, but it also marked the point where he began his long, slow descent. What we still don't know. Did Elvis ever express to anyone that he felt the Aloha concert was a moment he could never top? Was there a noticeable change in his onstage demeanor or offstage behavior in the months immediately following the broadcast? Did the designers, Ballou and Doucette, feel pressure to create something even more spectacular after the Aloha suit, and did they fail? Could the physical strain of performing in such a heavy costume have exacerbated the health problems that were already beginning to emerge? Number 4. Where is the legendary gold lame suit today? Before there were jumpsuits, there was the gold suit. In 1957, Colonel Tom Parker commissioned the Hollywood designer Nudie Cohn, famous for his rhinestone, nudie suits worn by country stars, to create a spectacular outfit for Elvis. The result was a head-to-toe suit made of gold lame. It included a jacket, pants, shoes, and even a gold tie. It cost $10,000, an astronomical sum for a costume at the time. This suit was the first time Elvis was packaged as a true showman, a step beyond the simple clothes of his early days. That Elvis wore the full suit for the cover of his album, 50 million Elvis fans can't be wrong. He also wore it on stage for a handful of shows in 1957, but he quickly discovered a problem. The gold lame pants were not practical, they were delicate, and the metallic fabric began to flake and shed almost immediately. He famously complained that they made him look like a gold-plated string bean. After just a few performances, he ditched the pants and would only wear the gold jacket, pairing it with black trousers. The gold jacket became an iconic part of his 50s image. But what happened to the complete suit? This is where the mystery begins. The story of the suit is fragmented, and its pieces are scattered. The most famous piece, the gold jacket, is accounted for. For many years, it was on display at a museum in Nashville owned by Jimmy Velvet, a friend of Elvis's. Velvet had acquired it from Colonel Parker. Later, it was sold to a private collector. It is currently on loan to Graceland, where it is often a centerpiece of their 50s exhibits. So, the jacket is safe. But what about the rest of it? The pants, the shoes, the tie. Their whereabouts are much less certain. The pants are the most mysterious part. Because Elvis stopped wearing them so early, they were separated from the jacket. The accepted story is that Colonel Parker, ever the promoter, kept them. Over the years, pieces of the flaky gold fabric were supposedly cut off and given away to fans or used in promotions. The idea of the pants being slowly disassembled is a strange one. There are conflicting reports. Some say the pants are still in the possession of the Parker estate. Others claim they were sold to a private collector years ago. A pair of gold lame pants, claimed to be the originals, did surface at an auction once, but their authenticity was debated. Without a direct line of provenance back to the Colonel, it's hard to be sure. The gold shoes and tie are also missing in action. Like the pants, they were likely separated from the jacket and stored away. They could be in a box in the Parker archives, or they could have been given away or sold decades ago. No one seems to know for sure. The gold lame suit represents the first attempt by Colonel Parker to create a brand for Elvis. It was pure marketing genius. The suit was a symbol of success, the king in his golden armor. Its value is immense, not just monetarily, but historically. It's the bridge between the raw rock and roller of the Sun years and the polished superstar of the 60s and 70s. The fact that this foundational costume is not complete and accounted for is a major gap in the historical record. The jumpsuit era has its mysteries, but the fate of its golden predecessor is one of the oldest and most frustrating. What we still don't know is there any definitive proof that Colonel Parker actually cut up the gold pants for souvenirs. What is the current location of the most credible pair of original gold pants? Did Nudie Cone make more than one version of the suit, and could a backup pair of pants or shoes still exist? Has anyone ever attempted a forensic analysis of the gold jacket at Graceland to match its fabric to any of the surviving pants candidates? Number 3, did the jumpsuits contribute to his physical decline? This is a sensitive and controversial question. Elvis Presley's tragic death at the age of 42 was the result of a complex mix of factors, primarily his abuse of prescription drugs and his poor diet. But could his iconic stage costumes have been a contributing factor to his deteriorating health? There's a compelling, if circumstantial, case to be made. First, consider the sheer physical weight of the suits. The early jumpsuits of 1969 to 71 were relatively simple and lightweight, but as the 70s progressed, they became heavier and heavier. The designs grew more elaborate, covered in thousands of metal studs, rhinestones, and chains. The American Eagle suit and cape weighed around 30 pounds. The Mexican sundial was notoriously heavy. Now imagine wearing a 30-pound outfit under blazing hot stage lights for a 90-minute show. And Elvis was not just standing and singing. He was moving, dancing, doing karate kicks. This was an intense cardiovascular workout. The sheer weight of the costume would have put extra strain on his heart, his joints, and his muscles. For a man whose health was already compromised, this added physical burden, night after night, could have been significant. Second, there's the issue of heat. The jumpsuits were made from heavy polyester double-knit fabric. It was durable and stretched well, but it did not breathe. Performing under intense stage lights in a polyester suit is like working out in a sauna. Elvis was famous for sweating profusely on stage. His road manager, Joe Esposito, talked about how the suits would be completely soaked by the end of a show, weighing even more than when they started. This chronic dehydration and heat stress would have put a tremendous strain on his body. It could have affected his blood pressure and put more stress on his already enlarged heart. While a single show might not be dangerous, doing this for hundreds of shows over several years could have had a cumulative negative effect on his cardiovascular health. Finally, there's the psychological aspect. As Elvis gained weight, the jumpsuits became a source of physical and mental discomfort. He was a man who had always been proud of his looks. Being squeezed into a tight, revealing outfit that highlighted his weight gain must have been humiliating. This could have led to a vicious cycle. He felt bad about his appearance, which led to depression and more self-destructive behavior like poor eating and drug use, which in turn made his physical condition worse. The suits that were once a symbol of his power and virility had become a daily reminder of his physical decline. They were a trap. He had to wear them because that's what the audience expected. But wearing them was physically punishing and emotionally draining. No one is suggesting that the jumpsuits killed Elvis. The primary culprits are well known. But they may have been an overlooked environmental factor. They were his work clothes, and his work environment was physically extreme. The costumes that helped create his legend may have also played a small but significant role in hastening his end. What we still don't know, did any of the doctors who treated Elvis ever express concern about the physical strain of his performances in those heavy costumes? Did Elvis ever modify his stage act, cutting out more strenuous moves, specifically because a suit was too heavy or hot? Was there any research done at the time on the health effects of performing under such conditions? Could the specific dyes and chemicals used in the fabrics have had any long-term health effects? Number 2, what did the animal symbols really mean? Elvis's stage wardrobe in the 1970s was a veritable zoo. He wore suits adorned with peacocks, tigers, eagles, and dragons. These weren't just random decorations. Elvis was a man deeply invested in symbolism. He chose these animals for a reason. The mystery lies in decoding his true intentions. Were they simple expressions of power and beauty, or did they connect to his private spiritual journey? The eagle is the most straightforward. He wore several eagle-themed suits, most famously for the Aloha from Hawaii concert. The American bald eagle is the national bird of the United States. The 1973 Aloha show was a patriotic event broadcast globally. The eagle was a clear symbol of America. Elvis was presenting himself as a global ambassador for American culture. But for Elvis, it was likely deeper than that. As mentioned before, the eagle is a powerful spiritual symbol of vision, power, and connection to the divine. He wasn't just representing America, he was presenting himself as a figure of monumental, almost spiritual power. The peacock is more complex. He debuted the peacock jumpsuit in 1974. It's one of his most beautiful and beloved designs. On the surface, the peacock is a symbol of flamboyant beauty and spectacle, perfect for a Las Vegas headliner. But Elvis was aware of its deeper meanings. In many cultures, the peacock symbolizes immortality, integrity, and resurrection. This would have appealed to the spiritual seeker in him. Linda Thompson, his girlfriend at the time, has said that Elvis considered the peacock suit to be a good luck charm. He felt it brought him positive energy. He wore it for the opening of new tours. It was his personal talisman. The tiger is another key symbol. He had a tiger suit, also known as the burning tiger. The tiger is a universal symbol of raw power, strength, and ferocity. This connected directly to his stage persona. On stage, he was a predator, a dominant force. He was also a martial artist. The tiger is a major symbol in many forms of karate and kung fu, representing strength and courage. When he wore the tiger suit, he was embodying the fighting spirit that he so admired. Then there is the dragon suit. The dragon is a mythical creature, and its meaning varies between cultures. In the West, it can be a symbol of evil, but in the East, where Elvis's martial arts interests lay, the dragon is a benevolent symbol of wisdom, luck, and cosmic power. It's a symbol of the ultimate creative force. By wearing a dragon, Elvis was aligning himself with these Eastern philosophical concepts. It was another nod to his private studies, a symbol the average audience member might see as just a cool monster, but which had a deeper meaning for him. These weren't just costumes, they were declarations of intent. They were his personal heraldry. He was using these powerful animal archetypes to project an image of himself as more than just a singer. He was a king, a warrior, a spiritual adept. The mystery is not that he used these symbols, but how deeply he believed in their power. Was he simply playing a role, or did he genuinely feel that by wearing the skin of a tiger or the feathers of a peacock, he could channel their energy? Given the intensity of his spiritual beliefs, the latter is a strong possibility. What we still don't know, did Elvis keep a journal or make notes about why he chose specific animal symbols? Are there any other animal designs that were sketched but never made into suits? Did the order in which he wore these animal suits during a tour have any significance? Was there a specific book or spiritual text that influenced his choice of these particular animals over others? Number one, who was the true architect of the jumpsuit? This is the biggest, most contentious, and most fundamental mystery of all. For decades, the story was simple. Bill Ballou was the genius who designed Elvis Presley's iconic jumpsuits. Ballou was a respected Hollywood costume designer. He got the credit in books, documentaries, and interviews. His name was synonymous with Elvis's 70s look. But there was another man working mostly behind the scenes whose contribution may have been just as important, if not more so, Jean Doucette. Bill Ballou was the head of the operation. He ran the IC Costume Co. and had the primary relationship with Elvis and Colonel Parker. He was in charge of the overall concept, the silhouette, and the business side of things. He was, without question, the man who came up with the initial idea of the jumpsuit as a practical solution for Elvis's stage needs. Jean Doucette was Ballou's partner and the company's chief designer and embroiderer. He was the artist. While Ballou was managing the big picture, Doucette was the one with the pen in his hand, sketching the intricate designs. He was the one who figured out how to translate an idea like peacock or sundial into a stunning, wearable piece of art. He was a master of embroidery and the application of studs and jewels. The controversy arises from the division of credit. As the years went by, Doucette began to speak out, claiming that he was the true creative force behind the most famous designs. In his book, Elvis, The Jumpsuit Era, and in numerous interviews, he has stated that Ballou's role was more managerial. Doucette claims that he was the one who sketched the vast majority of the designs that made the jumpsuits famous. He says that Elvis would often communicate his ideas directly to him. This has created a deep rift in the history of the jumpsuits. On one side, you have the established narrative with Bill Belew as the singular creator. On the other, you have Jean Doucette's detailed, first-hand account of being the hands-on artist who brought the visions to life. The truth is likely somewhere in the middle. It was probably a collaboration. Belew would have set the overall direction, and Doucette would have executed the artistic details. But collaborations can be complicated. Who gets the credit for an idea? The person who says, "Let's do a suit with a bird on it," or the person who spends 100 hours designing a breathtaking peacock feather pattern? The evidence is murky. Most of the original sketches are gone. The key players are mostly gone. And Bill Belew passed away in 2008, holding to his story as the primary designer. Jean Doucette is still alive and continues to assert his crucial role. Without a clear paper trail, we are left with conflicting memories. This isn't just a matter of professional jealousy. It goes to the heart of the creative process. The jumpsuits are seen as a singular artistic vision, but were they the product of one mind, or the result of a creative partnership where one partner received all the public glory? The design of the American Eagle, the peacock, the sundial, these are masterpieces of costume design. The question of who truly conceived of them is the ultimate unsolved mystery. It's the puzzle upon which all the other questions about the jumpsuits are built. We may know what they looked like, but we may never know for sure whose mind they truly came from. What we still don't know, are there any surviving internal IC costume code documents that would clarify the division of labor between Belew and Doucette? Did Elvis ever comment to other members of his entourage about who he considered the real designer? Did other employees of the costume company ever witness the creative process, and could they confirm who did the actual sketching? If Jean Doucette was the primary artist, why did he wait so long to publicly claim credit for his work?